Hey guys, welcome into another episode, A Little Bit of Life podcast, right here with your host, Little. We are back with our true crime episode, and I say this every time. I cannot believe it's already been a month. I feel like we were just sitting and doing this last month, but um, super excited to talk about this because I feel like there's so many twists and turns that have gone on now for over 19 years. We are talking about the passing of Natalie Holloway. This is like your baby. This
I
is
know.
like your case. You're like, I want to do this,
I know.
especially since she passed May 30th. I can't believe it was in 2005 already.
Yeah.
Like, where is the time gone?
It's been 19 years. I was looking at it too because this episode's going to come out on the 30th. So it'll actually come out on
Mhm.
the anniversary, which is, we didn't plan it that way. It just happened. Not,
Chills.
I
It
know.
like gives me chills. That's creepy. Creepy, creepy.
Yeah.
I just remember when this was like in the news and it was like extremely just everywhere. You couldn't turn your TV on without hearing it, seeing the photo of her. And I think it was around that time that like traveling for groups and schools and stuff like that, it wasn't really a big fear. It was always like, oh, if you're somewhere alone on a personal trip, that's more of like a cause of concern, so to speak. So I think it really opened up a whole new level of not being in the United States, traveling, who you're meeting when you're traveling, and you're not safe anywhere. I think like I think around this time I was a sophomore in college, and I remember really getting creeped out on college campuses, like going anywhere and thinking, oh my gosh, who can I trust? Who can I talk to?
Yeah. I was a junior in high school. I graduated in '06. So this was literally the year before my senior year in high school. And you're sitting there and you're like, oh shit, like next year, this is going to be us going on our senior trip. And it's like, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? And I feel like that year that just happened with her, I feel like our seniors that year, from what I can remember, I feel like they went to DC. I don't remember our school ever leaving the country and going anywhere. So then our senior year,
Mhm.
they went to Asheville, North Carolina. So for us, I didn't even go. So I was like, what's in Asheville, North Carolina? It's not a big deal. So I didn't even go on our senior trip because it was like, no thanks. But it really fear for all senior trips, I feel like across the country, because it was like, you just didn't want to go.
Mhm. I feel like you hear like my friend just recently went to Aruba and it was like a weird thing that we were doing this episode for this month because I remember she's like, I just need to get away and I'm going on a trip and the flights are super cheap. I'm like, oh, where are you going? And she's Aruba. And I was like, don't go anywhere on the beach by yourself. Don't talk to anybody. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, do you remember Natalie Holloway? And she's no, because she lives in like upstate Connecticut. And so she's like, who are you talking about? I'm like, either watch this right before you go on your trip or watch it after. Don't watch this during because then you're going to sit in your hotel room and be freaked out all the time.
Yeah. It was a huge deal. I remember it, like you said, being plastered everywhere. And then still, like every single year that it comes up on the anniversary, documentaries come back on TV. Dateline re airs the episode, it seems like. Every year it gets talked about. And it's just one of those cases that I feel like we'll never know the real answer, no matter what happens. Because
Mhm.
I feel like obviously we're going to get to like details and stuff, but the person that obviously took her life is never going to come out and say what fully happened.
Yeah. It breaks my heart for the family because it's not having that sense of closure. And it's like that, not even having her body, not even knowing where she is ended up. So when all this was airing, what did you think like initially when they first started putting it on the news and like her parents, her mother was very actively in the media, which I think was very helpful in like progressing, just making this a national thing. Because she flew down there almost immediately and was like searching for her daughter. And like when you think of the case of Natalie Holloway, you think of her mom as the poster in the media. So when her mom first got down there and they were trying to search to see where she was, because at that time she was just missing, there was no information. What did you think happened to her? Like on the outside watching it, what was your like immediate reaction to it?
Um, I don't really remember like my immediate reaction because I don't know that I was like super invested in the beginning of when it all first happened. But I remember, like you said, her mom being like the poster or like the face of her case. And I feel like that was really the first time that we ever saw this overwhelming media attention to a case that was like outside of the country. We have had Minnie Ramsey and cases like that where it overtook the media, but those all happen in the United States. I feel like this is the first one that really took over that didn't happen here. And you're trying to figure out what happened outside of the country and you're trying to get other
Mhm.
countries' police involved. And it was really sad to watch because they weren't super helpful at all.
Yeah, it scared me because I had just gotten back from a trip to Mexico with a bunch of my girlfriends, and there were a couple, like, parents that came with us at the time, but
Mhm.
I remember sitting there and really, like, self-reflecting because even in Mexico, like, I wasn't 21. We've all been there, but I wasn't 21, and I remember going down to Mexico and thinking, "Wow, this is amazing, everything's new and it's tropical," and I could walk into a bar and order whatever I wanted essentially and drink and have a great time, knowing that I was underage, knowing there was nobody there to stop me. And there was a sense of like male attention not being at home, so to speak. And so you just feel like you're a lot older than you really are in that moment. And I wonder always if that's what Natalie felt in that moment because they had been drinking. Again, a lot of true crime stuff. There was a lot of alcohol involved, but so many people kept saying, "Oh, she's getting all this media attention because she's the blonde hair, blue eye." No, it was because it was like what could have happened to any of us at that time. Because again, nothing had really happened on a national standpoint like this of like you said, you go out of the country, something happens to you, you go missing, and then it's what are the legalities? What can the police department do here versus there? How far can you push law enforcement? And I think it really just for me, it freaked me out. I was like, "Wow, this could have happened to me." And I think a lot of females sat there in that moment thinking, "Yeah, that could happen to any of us, no matter what we looked like."
Yeah. Yeah, and I never really thought about it in that sense just because I was never one to push the limits as a teenager, just because I was so terrified of my dad finding things out and getting in troubles. I
Mhm,
was never one even I don't think I took my first sip of alcohol till I was almost 8. Because I was like,
mm,
not getting in trouble. And even then it was like not a whole lot. So I didn't of course I put myself in her shoes and thought yeah, that can probably happen, but I was like, I would never put myself in that position, so I didn't look at it full
mhm.
that way. But yeah, it's definitely something that could have happened to any teenager that goes out of the country. One thing that I always thought too, watching it like years later, was I compared it a lot to when a popular show that you and I watch a lot, like You're on the Beach. When they went to Cancun and when you see those teenagers getting shit faced on national television and that could have easily been any of them, even probably not because they're surrounded by cameras, but had they not been, that could have been something that happened to any of them on their trip that they took. And they weren't even on a school trip. They just went as a bunch of friends. And I remember watching that show back as an adult and being like, thinking of her in that case and being like, wow, if that just, it, you think of it as an adult.
Mhm. When they started interviewing, Sloot from A1 Day One, I was like, "Oh my dear Lord, baby Jesus, this man has something to do with this." He gave me very creepy vibes, and obviously now 19 years later, Natalie wasn't the only person that he took her life. There was another one exactly 5 years to the day. But going with Natalie, it was something where he even pleaded guilty to extortion of her mother. How sick and twisted can you be? Not only do you take their daughter, her only daughter, but you also then try and get money and extort $250,000 from her family of, "Hey, if you pay me this amount of money, I'll take you to where your daughter what I did with your daughter. I'll tell you what I did to your daughter." Do you believe what the story he told
I don't believe a word.
of what happened to her?
I don't believe a word that came out. Like, I don't think anything he's ever said has been true. I think little bits here and there of his stories have been true, but his full stories, no. Do I think he took her to the beach that night? Probably. Do I think
Mhm,
that he like pushed her body out into because the latest thing that he said was he pushed her body out into the ocean. Gone so far as to get on Google Earth and look at the exact location where he says, and you look at waters are crystal clear blue, and you're telling that she was bleeding out not to get like super graphic, but if she was bleeding out in those waters and you push her out, you're going to have to push very far because those waters are not deep for a while. And they say that they went looking for her not like the next morning. I just don't see how they wouldn't have found her if that was the truth, or found her body.
Yeah.
And they found nothing on the beach. And the way that he describes what he did to her, there would have been an extremely bloody scene. They found nothing. I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't either. I think possibly what he stated happened may have happened in bits and pieces, but I don't think it was where he said it happened. I think that was just a location that he was like, oh, I'm just going to detour them over here versus where it actually happened. But I remember even watching the news because this was like a wild goose chase of what's the next thing he's going to say next? What's the next bullshit line he's going to give to not only law enforcement, but to the family?
Yeah.
I remember going so far as he's, oh, yeah, like she's underneath the concrete of this house that's being built. It was extreme to the point where I think that was where the hold took place of the media of it was this goose chase that was entertainment. Meanwhile, her family was sitting there like begging. She's probably not, they were pretty much out from the gate of she's probably not alive. We just want to have our daughter so that we can bury her at home.
Right.
That was pretty much all that they wanted. And he just kept this wild goose chase going, which was so disrespectful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think he ever cared one way or the other to give the family any sort of closure. I think he did it for the attention. Like you said, the media attention. I think he did it for the fame. I think he did it for the money. I don't think he cared one bit about getting closure for the family. I don't think he cared. I think he's a true sociopath. I think he has no empathy. I don't think he has any sympathy. I think he cares about anybody but himself.
Mm-hmm. And he had some pretty powerful backing. His parents were very well known in Aruba. So I think that really it's that catch-22 of how far do you push law enforcement and the justice system in a smaller town? Aruba's not very big. And it's like, how do we then go after this kid? Because he was essentially a kid at that time. How do we go after this kid when his parents are almost of this prestige and untouchable? We've seen that happen in the United States as well with different true crime stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think his family, and I think that's part of where his not caring comes from, was his family's wealth and being well known, that he just thought he was untouchable.
I love that Natalie's mom made a statement that likely he was not going to be tried in Aruba, and obviously he couldn't be tried in the United States, but she kept saying that they're living on with the memories that they have of Natalie while he is rotting in prison. And it brings me to the point of talking about the case that it's so disturbing and disgusting what happened to Natalie. But like you said in the beginning, we don't have the secret details. We don't have the descriptions. We don't even know where her body is. And here we are 19 years later. But he went so far as to kill again 5 years to the day another victim, another female. And it's something where like when that happens and there is a double murder, even if it's 5 years, 5 days, 5 hours in between, I always wondered if the justice system and law enforcement would have done and dug a little bit deeper and been harder. I truly believe that he would have been in prison in Aruba and Stephany Flores would still be alive. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And you talk about with Natalie being blonde hair, blue eyed, Stephany was totally different. Stephany was dark hair, dark eyes. Like she looks nothing like Natalie. So I don't think that his type, I guess you want to say that, was what the media made it seem to be. I think that's when we found out about Stephany. And it's just, to me, the fact that it's exactly the same day did he know that? Did he do that on purpose? And that's where that behavior.
Mm-hmm. I think it was on purpose. I think he
I do
was
too,
purposely
yeah.
thinking, I got away with it. And it was 5 years to the day. Oh, it
Too.
gives me chills.
I do
Freaks
too.
me out.
Yeah, I literally have goosebumps.
And the way that he killed Stephany, because he was very apparent, almost as if when they were in Peru and they were questioning him and he was giving his statement, he was full on bragging what he did. Do I believe his story? No, because again, I don't believe anything that comes out of this man's mouth. But he did claim that they had gone out, they were at a casino, they went back to the hotel room, and he received a message that turned into multiple messages, basically interrogating him from somebody on the internet that he claims of what happened to Natalie, you killed Natalie. Supposedly, he claims Stephany saw these messages.
Mhm.
She flipped out, and then she started, which I don't buy this again, but he claims that she started hitting him, so he hit her back, and then he just blacked out. But he went so far as to say he choked her, he beat her, and he smothered her with his bloody shirt just to make sure that she could not go to the police. I think she found out a lot more information in that hotel room about Natalie because it was that 5-year marker, and there was no coming out of that room for her.
Yeah, I agree. I think she saw something on his phone or she found something out that she wasn't supposed to know, and that's the only reason. But I also think that there may be more to it because of the way that in the camera footage from the hotel room, the way that he looks into that camera, like he knows he's gonna get caught. He knows he's getting
Mhm.
watched. He's just so eerie and like weird to me. I can't unsee the look on his face sometimes when I think about this case because it's like he knows he's going to get caught. He knows that she went in and he knows that when they watch this camera footage, when she comes up missing for a few days, he knows that they're not going to see her come out of that room. And he looks at that camera like, I did it again. Come for me.
Mhm.
It's
He had that
scary.
look when they were walking him out in Aruba the very last time with his parents, because 'cause I'll never forget his mom was like, "Oh, this has been so difficult for him, and he was great in school and this and that," and I'm like, this is weird. You're bragging about your son when the whole world is watching." I feel like this was the first case where it was, like, literally the court of public opinion. That's what I felt this case really was. But he had that same look of, like, "Oh, I got away with it." And then I know exactly what you're talking about, that on that camera, that look of, "Oh, I did it again."
Mhm.
I think it was this egotistical just sense of
Yeah.
power and control of, "I did it 5 years ago, let's see if I can do it again."
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that look was just like, I did it again. And I know you're gonna know. Come for me.
Mhm,
Come get me.
mhm.
Oh,
Disgusting. I feel for Stephany Flores' family because, like I said, I feel like the ball was really dropped in Aruba, but I don't think that they had the capacity to really handle the magnitude of this case, and so I think that they probably should have called in some extra sense of help and reinforcement, but I'm also not happy with his sentencing for Stephany Flores. I think that it was very mundane in comparison to what he did. Granted, he has not been officially convicted of Natalie Holloway. He's admitted to it. He stated he did it, how he did it. It's been, again, all over the place. But he only got 28 years, 28 years in prison for what he did.
I mean, he should have got life.
Wild to me. Uh-huh.
Period. And there's no doubt in anybody's mind that he killed Stephen. And you're
Hmm.
giving him 3 years.
Hmm.
I think
Yep.
the justice system it's beyond screwed up. And so
He did get an additional 18 years tacked onto that 28 years because he was trafficking cocaine in prison like a dumbass. But still, it's like you get 18 years for trafficking cocaine, but you only get a 10 additional years for murdering someone. And then you were already in the spotlight, which is crazy in regards to another case that was 5 years to the date. And it was the exact same supposed, like, linear way that these 2 females passed. It was sexual advances, it was the struggle, it was the choking, then it was this, then it was that. The stories are changing, but if you compare these 2, it is like black and white. They are exactly the same, 5 years to the T.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. He caught them at an opportune moment. I can't remember if Stephanie had been drinking or not. I know she was like playing blackjack or poker or something at a casino.
Mhm.
So he caught them at an opportune time and he totally took advantage of both of them.
Yep, and now the scary part is he is married. He got married in prison. And he is a father to a daughter. If that does not make your skin crawl, like, I don't even know. It's so crazy because I remember, like, it coming across the news, which again, it went to Vander Sloot is married. He met this female in prison, this and that. But it always goes back to Natalie, which does make me feel bad for Stephanie's family because I feel like her passing is very overshadowed.
Yeah, it is.
But they did get the answers because, again, we're 19 years. That makes me feel so old. 19 years later, and it's still, where is Natalie? Where is her body?
Sadly, in my opinion, is I think he did take her out into the ocean. That's the only way he could have gotten rid of her completely. So I don't think her body will ever be found. Unfortunately, that's my opinion. I think if it was able to have been found, it would have by now. Because, like you said, Aruba's very small. I just think that at some point, something would have come up by now. I do think he took her out into the ocean, whether he pushed her out into the ocean, he walked her out into the ocean, he took her on a boat, because at one point that was said that he took her out on a boat and dumped her over. To me, that seems the most plausible, unfortunately. So I don't think her body will ever be found. But yeah. And another thing was him being married and having a child now. At one point, while he was married, he also had another boyfriend. There were two women at the same time that I just can't. And they look similar to how Stephany looks or look your descent. And it's just like, how? And they know who he is. They know what he's done. And at one point, the woman I believe he was married to was like, I just don't think that he could have done this. That's just not who he is. And I was like, hello? Have you not watched any of the surveillance footage from the hotel room? Like, he looks right in the camera as he walks in the hotel room with this chick, and then she never comes out. And have you been under a rock for the last 20 years?
And, oh, this isn't who he is. The person that you met from A1 Day 1 has been behind bars for the murder of a female. It is not like you dated them for years and then they just got this sentencing and wrongful. Yeah, I'm like, okay, to each their own. Everybody deserves love, but wow, it just, with his story, nothing surprises me with this man. Nothing.
I don't know. That surprised me. The fact that he's able to manipulate not one, but two women is mind blowing. Like a path of psychopath. All I can say. It's just, ugh, I'm gross.
It's wild to me to watch all of the, like you said, the Dateline and the CNBC and all the stories and the documentaries and things that come out, especially because every year we just get closer and closer with no answers. And it's really heartbreaking to see her family because you see now her brother and you put it into perspective. She was around our age. And so you really put it into perspective thinking what her brother had said. We missed out. We're missing out on her getting married. We're missing out on her because she was going to med school. She was very smart, academic. She was on point. And it's like everything got ripped away from her. And her mom said, she goes, I will never be a grandmother. I will never see her be a mom. And yet you see that in true crime of the victims and the families that are almost stuck in time forever with no answers and no closure. Meanwhile, he's getting everything in prison. He has the marriage. Granted, he's not face to face, but he has a marriage. He has a child. He has all of these things. And yet they're still stuck with Natalie at 18 years old.
Years ago.
Forever.
Yeah. It's disgusting to me in the fact that he's even allowed enough contact with a woman to be able to have a child. That's what me about the justice system is like. He is accused and charged and sentenced for murdering one woman. He's a suspect in another murder. He extorted that woman's mother for money. And you're allowing him contact with other females, physical contact with other females, to the point of him bringing a child into this world. And that child is a female. What the fuck is wrong with this world? It's so infuriating. And yet her family doesn't even have her body for closure. It's so fucked up.
Yep. I wanted to do this episode to bring up Natalie's name, because here we are 19 years later. I feel that a lot of us, with the new documentaries coming out, her family speaking up and speaking out, it's opening a wound for them too. But I think it's something where it's a case that almost connected all of us for the very first time with true crime because it was something where we could all relate to it in some way, shape, or form, whether we were that age or even with Aruba. They saw a massive decline in their travel and in regards to their tourism because that's how they survived. And it was this fear of what if we go there? Are we safe? If something happens, how is the police department? How is the law enforcement going to help us? And it's something where would I ever go to Aruba? Probably not, because of course, when I think of that name, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, it's Natalie. Oh my god."
No.
But I think it really brought into perspective of travel and teenagers and trips and things like that, because I think we were all very naive of it could never happen here. If it's gonna happen, we see it on the news, but it could never happen to an American going on a school trip. So I want you guys to interact on this episode and comment. What do you think happened to Natalie? Do you think he put her in the ocean? Do you truly believe his story? Or do you think that maybe he secretively hid her body somewhere else? That's my point of view. I don't think he put her in the ocean. I truly don't. I think she was placed somewhere that no one would even think because that's where he was from. I think she was put somewhere else. So I'm excited to hear everybody's standpoint on where they think Natalie is because I think this is a case that we will never know.
Yeah. So he could have very well placed her inside their home because his home was dated and blocked off. Well, I don't think we'll ever know, to be honest.
I don't either. But I am very excited to hear everybody's standpoint on this specific story on Natalie Holloway. And if you are listening to this and you are a college student or you're traveling, be safe anywhere you go, whether it's at home or whether you're out of the country. Really be aware of who is around you, your surroundings, and those that you're really interacting with. Because now, granted, around that time with Natalie, we didn't have social media like we do now. And it's very easy now to track your every move, where you're at, who you're with, when you're alone because we don't even realize now how often we post our entire lives for everyone to see locations, travel, everything. So if you're listening to this summer, or maybe you have a child, be a little bit extra nosy, be a little bit cautious, because I think this was really the first true, like I said, true crime story that we could all relate to in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think any of us will be the same, but I also don't think Aruba will ever be looked at the same either after this.